Did you know that my girl, seriously, Cardi B is reportedly worth 80 plus million dollars? Like, that's phenomenal. These younger women, younger hip hop artists are doing their thing. I mean, they have made inroads into spaces that their predecessors were not able to crack, and it's phenomenal. And yet, they are not absolved of the challenges that go on in relationships. None of us are, because codependency runs rampant in relationships. I'm Tracey Knight, and I'm your codependency coach, and I wanted to talk today a little bit about Cardi B and her beloved Offset, who's a part of the Migos. And they are, I believe, still married. At least reportedly, they are still married and not officially divorced. And they have, had a bumpy relationship, or so it would seem. Now, that bumpy relationship is not all hardships. I mean, they've had big bumps in their career, for sure, as already indicated. 80 million? Yes, go girl. They've also had baby bumps, right? So that's where we bring these beautiful little bundles of joy into the world. And then there are the traditional bumps in the road that we experience when there is allegedly arguments, dishonesty, and infidelity. Now, I can tell you right now, baby, that relationships are absolutely challenging. And marriage can be really, really hard. But celebrity marriages that are in the social media eye are almost impossible to manage and navigate because they are so closely scrutinized. Today I'm not going to be scrutinizing them, but I'd like to make some observations around how I see codependency could be creeping in to not only their relationship, but into all of our relationships. The beautiful thing about people who have chosen to be in the media, we get an opportunity sometimes to see their life played out on a big screen or the small screen. And what we get an opportunity to do is to look for ourselves in that. Because the one thing about codependency, if you spot it, you got it. If you spot something that triggers you, if you spot something that rubs you the wrong way, there's probably a place where that's going on in your life. So as we have this conversation and all the subsequent other conversations we're going to have, I'm going to invite you to really get curious about how some of these patterns have shown up in your relationship. I know as I was doing some research around Cardi B and Offset, I was thinking back to what it was like to be 30-ish. And I was married at 24. For the first time, I was married at 24 and still married at the age of 30. And just how challenging it was to be in a situation where I'd been with someone for, maybe 7 years prior to that. And so we're in this long stint and you get in it and you're like, we're supposed to make this work because all of the fantasies through Disney and other TV movies and lyrics say that when you go out and you find yourself a boo, and you get married, you're supposed to make that work no matter what. But what people don't tell you is some of the barriers to really making that work are things like breaches in trust. And so since trust is the undergirding of all relationships, when that is fractured, it's very difficult to try to build on top of that fragile foundation. So I was thinking, as I was reading some of the articles about Cardi B and Offset, that what came up for me in terms of the codependent patterns are poor relationship standards or the absence of relationship standards. And I'm going to talk about each one of these. The fear of abandonment could be coming up. and people pleasing. So let's break each one of those down. And God knows I have experienced all of these in my relationships, and I want to challenge you to question whether or not you have experienced them. So one of the things around poor relationship standards, they tell us to go out and find a boo and get married and everything, but nobody really tells us to sit down before we get married and have a conversation around our values. When I am setting up as a coach with you, setting up your guidelines, your personal guidelines, some of the things that we're going to look at is your personal mission statement for each individual. Like, what is it that you envision for yourself? And what kind of paradigm do you have around relationships? Because depending on how you've grown up, you may not have ever have seen what a healthy relationship really looks like. So how can you possibly, other than the movies, how can you possibly script what you want your marriage to look like? It's almost impossible. So when I sit down with you as a coach, I'm going to be asking you about your vision around relationships. What are some of the images that you've seen around that? And what is your sort of mission statement for yourself and for the relationship? The other thing we're going to do is we're going to look at what your individual values are. So I'm wondering whether or not Cardi B and Offset ever took the time to really explore what their individual values are, the meaning of those words, and how do you imbue those values day in, day out. See, it's very easy to say that you're going to be a person who is in integrity, right? But if you don't define what integrity really means to you and how that plays out, for example, okay, integrity means that I am in a sexually exclusive relationship, or that I communicate with you that I don't want to be in a sexually exclusive relationship, because all of that plays into the marriage and whether or not the marriage can be successful. So if I say that integrity is one of my core values, we need to understand what that means as it relates to sex and other partners and communication and transparent and timely communication, full disclosure of all details. We have to understand what that means and be in agreement. So while each individual can have their own personal values, we also have to make sure that those values align as a couple. So I'm wondering whether or not they've ever done that. Did you ever do that in your relationship? Because that's what we build the relationship on top of, right? So it's difficult to impose standards. Standards are when you take a stand for yourself. It's difficult to impose those standards if you haven't set them first as a set of guidelines that you make all of your decisions around. Things like, how are we going to grow our careers? Is one person choosing and wants to go really big and the other person really wants to focus on having family? All of these are conversations that really need to be had and then upheld in the relationship. But a lot of times we fail to do that. I know I did. I wasn't even thinking about that. In my first marriage, what I was thinking about is we look good. We are both successful. We were in fraternities and sororities. So there was this element of having an expanded circle of popularity, and we knew how to party well. And, we both enjoyed travel. And, to be honest with you, while I look back on it now, it seems kind of superficial, but I don't know. He was nice and I was nice and we loved each other, even though I know that love is not enough. Love is not enough to hold a relationship together. It really is not, because there's going to be a lot of stuff that bumps up against that marriage that really is going to test that love. And people grow in different directions. So if you don't have a pathway that you all are both traveling down together and you have a collective set of goals that you're trying to attain, it's going to be very difficult to kind of hold that together. Another thing that I was thinking about for Cardi B and Offset is, could there be a fear of abandonment? I know I experienced that in my relationships. The fear of abandonment comes from this place of sometimes we will feel like the relationship is not aligned. Like when we arrive at that conclusion, like maybe this is not working for us, right? This is not working for me specifically. Like it's not working for me, but I don't want it to go away, right? I don't want to be alone. I don't want them to leave me. I don't want them to be with someone else. I don't even want to hear. And they're in media. So it's like, I don't even want to see them out dating somebody else, because then that would cause me to feel abandoned. It would cause me to feel alone. It would cause me to think like, did I do something wrong, or was I not enough? I know I've had that feeling before. What about you? So this fear of abandonment will keep us from having crucial conversations. And baby, if you cannot have crucial conversations in your marriage or in your relationship, you're building on quicksand for sure. Because all relationships will have conflict in it. All relationships will have disagreements. We are not trying to avoid conflict and disagreements. What we're trying to do is to develop the skills to be able to communicate effectively, depersonalize things, fight fair, be able to express ourselves with clarity, without judgment, without condemning someone. We are learning how to listen in the relationship, to fully understand, to appreciate the differences. But when you have a fear of abandonment, you will reserve telling the truth, speaking the truth, because you don't want the person to leave. And what I have learned, truth is the root. Trust is the fruit. So you can't get to trusting someone if you haven't planted the seed and cultivated the roots, nourished the root of telling the truth. But when you have a fear of abandonment, you will avoid telling the truth, your full truth. Your most authentic self will not show up. Your fully expressed version of yourself will not show up because of the fear of abandonment. I have been there before. And especially when we start to compare ourselves to other women or other men, or we feel like it's an indictment of our ability to hold a relationship together. And a lot of this comes from our childhood. If we've had parents who were divorced, or parents who were not there for us, or parents who came in and out of our relationship, it's very easy to feel this sense of abandonment. The third thing that I was thinking about with Cardi B and Offset is people pleasing. Now, that's not far behind. If we got a fear of abandonment, we don't have standards, or we don't impose or enforce our standards, right? And then we fear abandonment. And so the next thing that's going to naturally happen is people pleasing. I saw a lot of pictures of Cardi and Offset that were like, oh, he bought her this purse, several purses, and she's posing, holding the purses up. Or I saw her, like he brought her like a gazillion roses, which I love roses, but he bought her like a gazillion roses, and some were for like Mother's Day and different events and all that, to show his admiration for her, his love for her, which I appreciate. But what I also understand is that we will sometimes do things to just please the person because we think that it will keep us from having the arguments, the disagreements. We do it because it'll make them feel good in the moment, and we're really just trying to avoid the conflict. Men will do this oftentimes. And ladies, I just want to say this to you. A lot of times we're trying to hold men to certain standards that are really just unrealistic. And this is what I mean by that. And my sweetie actually said this to me. He was like, where do men learn how to be in relationships? He was like, most men learn on the street corner, or learn in a barbershop, or learn from their uncle, or, it's not like there is really this, for lack of a better word, school for men to really have the space to be vulnerable, to talk about their feelings, to see where healthy relationships are being modeled. Like, even as women, we don't even give them space to really tell the truth. Because we oftentimes take it so personally. If they really tell us what it is that they need and what they're feeling, we oftentimes get offended by that. So what they will do is people please, to try to keep down the tension, because it's not that they don't love us, it's just that they may not know how to really share what their truth is. One, we don't give them space for that. Society doesn't give them the space for that. And so it makes it really hard to be in relationships when we can't show up as our most authentic self. So, poor relationship standards, or the absence of relationship standards, fear of abandonment, and people pleasing, glaring to me possibly in this relationship and in other relationships. What about yours? I know I have experienced this. So here's what I want to offer as a few tips. If you are experiencing this in your life or in your relationship, or maybe you're ready to love again and you're wondering what you could do differently this time, if you're ready to open up and love again, one is get yourself some help. Get a coach. I am here to support you. Conquering codependency is a very real thing, and it's something that can be done. Codependency is just a set of dysfunctional habits that we have developed over time in order for us to survive in life. And they worked for a period of time. But now that we're learning to level up, we want something different in our relationships. It doesn't mean we have to throw our relationships away. It just means that we need to learn a different way of relating. So get yourself some help. And I am definitely here for you. The second thing is identify and heal your own triggers. Let me tell you something. Your triggers are your triggers. They really are not your boo's triggers. Anything that is triggering you, if there's a trigger around the fear of abandonment, it doesn't mean hold on tighter. No, that's going to strangle out your relationship. You need to understand why you are triggered around the fear of abandonment. And then we go back and we heal that so that you can be free to be fully expressed in your relationship. You also want your partner to be fully expressed in the relationship because they can't show up as their best self if we are strangling the relationship out. So healing your triggers is the second thing. And then the third thing is set and uphold personal standards. I really want us, we talk a lot about having boundaries, and you have heard me on many shows say, you don't need boundaries if you have standards. And I hold true to that. And yet I also want to say to you that if boundaries is where you need to start somewhere. Boundaries bind us in, but they are a place where we can draw a line in the sand and say, no, I don't want this in my life. That is a great start when you've previously allowed any and everything into your life. Right? So boundaries might be the starting place where we say, no, this is what I really want for myself. And so I'm going to draw a line in the sand and say, no, I don't want this. That would be a place to start. But when you're ready to really level up, setting standards for yourself, which is not for the other person, standards are for you. They're for you to uphold in your life. And so they are what set you free to be your fullest expressed self. They are what help you to make decisions. A lot of decisions will already be made for you because all you have to do is defer back to that set of guidelines that you have, and that will guide your decision making. It's not left up for interpretation. They're yours. They're not anybody else's. They're yours. They're what you're saying you want. And then you will learn how to trust yourself. Trust is the undergirding of all relationships, including the relationship that you have with yourself. So the question for this episode is, should I stay or should I go? If you are wondering that in your relationship, in your marriage, with your significant other, should I stay or should I go? The first place that you begin to go to answer that is to go within. And then the next place you do is call Coach Tracey Knight. I'm Tracey Knight. I'm your codependency coach. And if you need support, I want to invite you to join my Conquer Codependency Bootcamp. It is designed specifically for you. It's simple, easily accessible, 24-hour access to be exact. It's affordable for everyone, and it can be done quite easily. It only requires 1 hour a day for 30 days. And there's a host of tools and resources that are there for you as I walk you through your journey of taking back, transforming, and winning at the game of life. I don't want to leave this episode without inviting you to come and join this community by being an active participant. Comment in the comment section below. I want to hear from you. Like, share, and subscribe to the channel. When you comment below, ask your questions. Share with us what you're going through. What is troubling you? Why have you been in a quandary around whether or not you should stay or whether or not you should go or whether or not you should love again? There's no stupid question. And I promise you, there are so many people that are going through this very same thing. We just tend to scrutinize people who are in the public's eye, like Cardi B, but I applaud them for even being willing to share their story and share their journey, because there's so much for us to learn and glean from that. I hope that you've gleaned something from this particular episode, and I look forward to talking with you yet again. I'm Tracey Knight, and I'm your codependency coach.